Welcome to another episode of Courtside with Beilinson Tennis, part of the Tennis Channel Podcast Network. We have got a ton to cover, so let's get right to it. It's week one recap time. Happy to have my co-host and Hall of Famer on with me tonight, Steve Flink. Steve, I don't even know. Are you ready to rock and roll? This was just insanity.
Well, all I can say is I've been making my living as a tennis writer since 1974. I just don't really have the words to describe what's happened across these last 7 days. It's just spectacular. And you probably have heard, David, the likes of Brad Gilbert and Lindsay Davenport, also on the Tennis Channel, saying they've never seen a first week like it at a major. And I totally concur. And I've been attending these majors since 1965. I didn't become a full-time reporter until 74. So it's a long span for me, but I can't. And the other thing that's remarkable quickly about it, David, before you get to your questions, 32 seeds. Since we went to 32 seeds, it's tended to make the first weeks less enticing because you don't get those unexpected matchups early, but it hasn't mattered one bit this time around.
Absolutely. You kind of answered it, but I'm going to ask you it anyway, because I want to be specific about it. I was going to say, have you ever seen a better day on one single court covering tennis in all of your years covering the US Open in the first week? I'm not going to say, there's plenty of Super Saturdays. Everyone still talks about 1984 Super Saturday with Cash and Lendl going the distance, Martina and Chrissy going the distance, and then Connors and McEnroe going the distance. I'm talking first week only, that Friday, and we'll walk it through. But that Friday, have you ever seen a single day in week one in your history of covering tennis as good as that?
I don't think so. But on the other hand, Friday has some competitors with Thursday and Saturday. And so, every single day, there's been some days quite close to it, but that one was astonishing.
Yeah, let's start with Friday. And the first match today was Garbine Muguruza defeating Victoria Azarenka. That went the distance in 3 sets. Thought it was a good match. The next match absolutely set the tournament on fire with Carlo Alcaraz winning 7-6 in the 5th versus Stefano Sitsypas. You think that wasn't enough. You get the first night match with Leila Fernandez beating Naomi Osaka in 3 sets. We're going to get into that as well. It was sad seeing Naomi suffer. Really looked like she was suffering on the court there. And then the nightcapper, for those that were able to stay up, Frances Tiafoe beats Andre Rublev in 5 sets. It was an incredible day of tennis. I want to start with you, the match that really, to me, and there were plenty of matches before, but this was the match that really set the tournament on fire, and that's young Alcaraz winning that match. To set it up a little bit, he comes out firing, right? 6-3, 3-0. Comes back down to earth. Steph wins that second set, 6-4. And then Steph is up 2 breaks in the third. This is where it really got interesting. Steph's up 2 breaks in the third, and the kid comes back and wins a tiebreaker 7-6.
Yeah, there were 3 set points and mixed in there too. 2 chances to serve it out. No, there was a stage there. He had a point for 4-1. Alcaraz did in the second set that might have made a big difference to help him get a 2-set lead. But for the way he was able, because essentially what happened is Sitsypas found his range, he began to serve much better. It deserted him for a while late in the third when he should have closed it out. But overall, he was serving much better and he was more comfortable from the baseline. And I just was amazed what happened in the 4th and 5th sets, because obviously the kid was spent in the 4th and Sitsypas blitzed him 6-love, and it was the trainer had come out and stretching out his legs. And I don't think it was gamesmanship on Alcaraz's part. I think he's a young kid trying to find his place in the game and strengthen his body. But you would have thought, I wasn't surprised he had a resurgence in the 5th, but I was very surprised that he could stay with him, keep serving from behind all the way through the 5th, never feel the pressure at 3-4, 4-5, 5-6. You're waiting for him to maybe crack a little, nothing doing. And then once more again, he wins a second tiebreak from Stefano, just as he's done in the 3rd set. And that again was remarkable for the freedom of his hitting, the way he just hit out throughout the tiebreak and didn't back up. And here's Sitsypas, David, serving 3 aces in that tiebreak. He actually didn't play a bad tiebreak. He still was serving brilliantly at times, but it was not enough. And again, the final icing on the cake was 2 match points getting away on Alcaraz's serve from 6-3. And then he finds a way to win the last point on Sitsipas's serve, fittingly with a forehand winner off a sort of a floating slice backhand from Sitsypas.
And for the listeners that remember, the match point he had right before the one he won, he missed the topspin lob by a millimeter.
That was a heartbreaker, David. He drop shotted to draw him in, which he'd been doing so skillfully throughout the match at all the right times. And he hit the topspin lob nicely. And it was just incredibly unlucky. The crowd was ready to shower him with the applause, and they thought it for an instant was over, and so did he. And then the umpire quickly confirmed that the ball was out. No, that was the moment of the tournament so far. There's no doubt in my mind about that. You mentioned all these other great matches, but nothing so far has topped that, because it just had all the elements. And then you also had the Sitsypas playing the role of the villain somewhat because of the controversy over the bathroom breaks, but still conducting himself honorably against this kid. And also, by the way, another nice moment for Sitsypas. He was really nice he was terrific at the net in the embrace and the shake of the hands. There was nothing curt about that at the net. And I think that showed a lot of class and grace on Stefano's part, who sometimes is maybe criticized a bit more deeply than he should be. Yes, he has flaws. He's a human being, but he has many remarkable traits.
I want to emphasize the drop shots that you referred to earlier. By my count, and it's going to be an approximate number, he must have done roughly around 20 drop shots. I don't remember him missing one. Now, I'm not saying he won every one of those points. I'm just saying I don't remember him missing a drop shot, whether it's into the net or not. I mean, to me, it was almost, he was perfect every time he did a drop shot. I don't remember missing one.
No, I don't think so either. It just shows you too how he picked the right times, and he has great feel. That's such a great backup to his phenomenal power, and that's what really he was showcasing more than anything else. And that's what Sitsypas said afterwards. He never felt he faced anybody that hit the ball that hard, and you saw it a couple of times when Stefanos was positioned well at the net and could still not handle the volley. And it wasn't even like he was stretched out to try to deal with that passing shot. He was right there to execute a forehand volley and just couldn't deal with the speed. So for this kid to complement his pace and awesome power with that wonderful touch on the drop shots, and you're right, I don't recall him missing one either. There were a few times I thought he should have been better prepared for the response, and he didn't win the point because he wasn't sure what he wanted to do with his next shot, but that improved over the course of the match too. So remarkable. Just a stunning performance.
And, people are going to obviously, because where he's from, comparing to Rafa, and we're not going to do that. I saw something on social media. It was interesting. His coach, Juan Carlos Ferrero, French Open champ, made the finals, U.S. Open in 2003, losing to Andy Roddick. Someone said he plays somewhat similar to his coach. And I think that's a better comparison than to the people who are dying to say that, hey, he plays like Rafa, because he doesn't play like Rafa.
No, he doesn't. It's, and obviously you don't have all that whirlwind topspin that's the feature of Rafa's game. The similarity, I think, is in the temperament and the mindset of a champion. You see that. And Ferrero Ferrero was a terrific player, great ground strokes, terrific two-hander. But he did not blast you off the court the way this kid can either. So in a sense, he's just his own. He's his own person. I wouldn't compare him to anybody right now. All I know is I expect by this time next year, we're going to be looking at a kid who's in the top 20 in the world. And he might end next year in the top 10. It wouldn't surprise me one bit. And of course, he did follow up. We can talk about that, but he did follow up, which is also a good sign, not to have
huge
a total. Yeah.
That's always hard to back it up after the first major big win of your career, at a Grand Slam. So he did back it up. We'll get to that in a little bit. So the day session ends. They let the night session people come in, and the very next match is Leila Fernandez and Naomi Osaka. And to me, a great win by Leila. It really was. To me, Naomi chucking her racket twice, cracking the ball in the stands. You never see that from Naomi. She's dealing with a lot of stuff right now, but you have never, in the history of us watching Naomi Osaka play matches, never seen that. And it was tough. I was watching it with some friends, and it was tough to watch because she wanted, you kind of felt like she wanted to be anywhere else but on that tennis court.
Yeah, you're right, but only after a certain point. In other words, I thought it was just a really well-played match. She was so well-positioned to win that match 7-5, 7-5. She breaks at the end of the first set. Same scenario in the second set, serving for the match. And that was that was what was so astounding, was you expected her to serve it out. She hadn't faced any break points. She was holding easy. Her serve had been first rate all through the contest. And then she tightened up a little. She started spraying a few forehands in that game and suddenly was broken. And that's what led to the racket tossing that you described, a couple of incidents with that, which we never see, because the forehand continued to betray her in the tie break. And that's what got her upset and throwing the racket, not viciously breaking it or anything, but it was sad to see her kind of unraveling. And then, of course, to see well, two things. First of all, Fernandez, the way that she was able to finish it off in the thirds is one thing, to steal the second set and to compete so beautifully under pressure, but then to get the early break while again, uncharacteristic of Naomi, she appeared to be half tanking early in the third set.
Yes.
You talk about not
rushing, really rushing.
That's what I mean by half tanking, though. She didn't want to compete anymore at that stage. However, that didn't last long. And she got right back to holding, and she was trying hard that was only lasted about a game or two. And then she kept holding her serve all the way through and made this girl serve it out at the end. And I was glad that's what happened, rather than Naomi just completely capitulating and losing a 6-1 third set. So, but the poise from Fernandez to complete this win, which of course she showed in a similar way, very similar perspicacity, you might say, against Kerber.
That's insane.
From down a set again, going into a second set tiebreak again, same deal. In this case, she was down 4-2 in the second set to Angie, and she finds a way to win that one. So I think we really are witnessing the arrival of a great, great player in Fernandez, and she has that sparkle with the crowd. She connects with them, but also she has the goods to break it up. That forehand is devastating.
18-year-olds. I mean, Alcaraz and Fernandez, I mean, like you said, back it up. They have huge wins, and then they back it up. I mean, Angelique Kerber, that was a sensational match. I mean, it's just great. And then again, the nightcapper, for those who stayed up, and you and I have talked about TFO before and how we want him to be a little bit more consistent, even when he's not in the spotlight, because he seems to really like the show courts and the spotlight. It may get a little tougher for him when he's more on those side. He's not playing really on a lot of side courts anymore, but maybe not Arthur Ashe, for example. He beat Rublev. I thought he played a great match against Felix last night. I thought that was high level. Felix served incredibly well. I think this is the level that we're all hoping to see from Francis consistently, and I think the results will deliver if he plays like he did. I thought he had a really good U.S. Open.
Oh, he did. It was excellent, and he had a good Wimbledon, because of Wimbledon he beat Sitsypas, but I don't know whether he's going to be able to stay with the likes of over the long term. I think Felix is going to really, not totally dominate that rivalry, but he's going to have I think he'll have a fairly decisive edge. And I think that's going to be true of a lot of players. I think Francis has grown significantly as a competitor and as a professional. But he comes into the tournament 50 in the world. He'll now come out of it probably in the 30s somewhere. You'd like to see him take his place somewhere in that top 25 and stay there. But you're right. He made serious strides. I thought sometimes the showboating was excessive in some of his matches. However, last night, he did a lot of that early on. And then it kind of disappeared. He just played serious tennis and gave it all. And as Felix said, the third set was almost a coin toss, because they both held serve.
Tifo had a set point.
Yeah, all set points at 4-5 and 5-6. You know, a couple at 15-40 the first time, and then another one the next time. So there were three of them. And then they go to the tiebreak, and Francis has a set point.
5-6. Yeah.
Yeah. And Felix served his way out of it. Hit a nicely placed serve down the tee. Francis was way behind the baseline, couldn't handle it, and then Felix wins at 8-6. So that set was beautifully played set. And understandably, Francis was a little let down to start the fourth, lost his serve early. But again, he, like Naomi, he didn't surrender. No. He buckled down and he held serve the rest of the way. And then Felix was able to close him out. So it was an honorable performance in defeat. And he definitely should be proud of what he did to beat Rublev and reach the round of 16. So he said big wins at the last two majors. Now the secret is what you were talking about. He has to learn, David, because he talked about it at Wimbledon, how he said right after the win over Sitsypas at Wimbledon, if that had not been on a show court, I don't, he basically was acknowledging that if that match had been thrown on the court 3, he's not sure he would have played that way. Now that's the next step I want to see from him. He's not always going to be on Arthur Ashe Stadium or Louis Armstrong. So when they don't put him out there, can he find the inspiration from within and be the top of the line professional that he seems to be becoming? Because that'll make a big difference in where he goes from here.
Yeah, 100% agreement with you. And I guess we'll go from one American to another American, Jensen Brooksby. The second round, his match against Taylor Fritz, those first 3 sets, I mean, oh my God, that was such a fight from both players. Incredible. And in the 4th set, I mean, I think it's safe to say Jensen crushed Taylor's spirit. He really did. He won that 4th set 6-2. Those first 3 sets were so tightly contested. I just think he took everything out of Taylor Fritz near the end of that match.
He did. He just ran down every ball, and Taylor was so patient whilst trying to stay aggressive. I really couldn't fault Taylor for the way he played, David, but you're right. He kind of broke his will. He kind of wounded his psyche, but I think the key thing was the second set long tie break. Taylor had at least 1 set point there, and he wasn't, if he could have gotten Brooksby down 2 sets to love, I think that Taylor would have been able to close it out. It was crushing to lose the tie, but I don't think it was through much fault of his own. Brooksby is just a tricky player, and we've seen, and then he follows it up and beats Karatsev, who's had a great year, was in the semis of the Australian against Novak and beat Novak in Serbia on clay, had great results until he started to trail off a bit pre-French Open on. And yet we thought he was sort of coming back to the top of his game. So that was a big win for Brooksby to beat him from 2 sets to 1 down.
Yeah.
So I don't know, David. I don't know how he gets by with that serve. I mean, you tell me, because to me that I've heard all of the commentators talk about it, and they would all love to make serious adjustments in that motion and the abbreviated motion. That he doesn't get a lot of speed on. He gets pretty good direction, but somehow he's getting by despite what I think in this league is not a top-notch serve yet. I can't believe it can't be corrected, though.
Right. I agree with you. And we'll see, he plays Novak later today. So we'll see if Djokovic can take advantage of that. I want to talk. Oh, go ahead. Just
a quick comment fast comment on that. It'll be interesting because the crowd will be going, they will be so animated and so almost frenzied at times, I suspect. Brooksby has become quite a showman in his own right, and he knows how to raise his arms now and play to the crowd, and he's really enjoying the atmosphere as an American at the U.S. Open. And so Djokovic is going to have to be very disciplined. I mean, no doubt Novak should win, but he doesn't want to let that crowd get too much into this. He had a fairly neutral crowd against Nishikori, which helped, and he was able to put his hands to his ears and so to get them to applaud him. He'll need to do a little of that tonight, but also be very calm, because that crowd will otherwise come down on him, because they're watching. This is an American, so they care more about the American than Novak going for the Grand Slam.
Yeah. For those that watch Jensen, I mean, y'all remember Brad Gilbert? He used to drive more talented players nuts, right? And I'll ask you: does he play a little? I mean, he doesn't win with flashiness, right? He doesn't beat you with flashiness. He almost makes your level go down a little bit to his. Now it doesn't always sound like a compliment when I say that, and that's not what I intend. He's a very good player, but does he have a little Brad Gilbert in his own style of play?
Yeah, I think you could. I think you have a valid point. I think the similarity to me is I mean, as you know, Brad wrote that book called Winning Ugly, and he was trying to describe himself. And I think there was some being self-effacing, some modesty there too, because there were a lot of things he did very, very well. He had a good first serve and a beautiful backhand, and he didn't miss much. He was pretty sound. He made you beat him, and that's what's going on with Brooksby too. Not flashy, but he gets so many balls back, and he will come up with a lot of unexpected shot selection. That's another thing Djokovic will have to be on his guard against. He will do things. He will not make the typical moves and go down the line when you're sure he's going cross court. He's very deceptive that way and kind of imaginative. And that I think more so than Brad, who I think was just a really cunning strategist. This kid has excellent instincts in terms of where to go with a shot at any given time. So, but I think the similarity, the framework of the game is there, and he's very sound in my view with his ground strokes. There's not much to exploit. The backhand better than the forehand, but boy, can he stay in a rally.
Yeah, he can, and he will definitely make you earn a victory over him because, like you said, he gets so many balls back. Two other Americans I want to talk to. It was Saturday night. Shelby Rogers against Ash Barty. Shelby's down 2-5 in the third set. Double break. Ash wins that match 98 times out of 100. I also think Ash wins that match 99 times out of 100 with no crowd. So if they played that last year. I think the crowd definitely helped Shelby. Shelby, give credit to Shelby a ton for never giving up and fighting. Ash, and I'm a huge fan of Ash Barty. I think she would even tell you she missed some shots uncharacteristically. I don't know if she got a little tight, but there were some rally balls that she missed late and big points. Huge win for Shelby, but that was some comeback, being down 2-5 against the number one player in the world, 2 breaks.
Yes, you described it well, Dave, because this was two-pronged. It took a lot of courage and poise and determination for Rogers, who lost her 5 times recently, all kinds of losses to her this year, some of them humiliating in her mind, even though she likes Ash personally, just that, the way she got beaten to a pulp in some of those matches, some of them were close. But here's what I think. 5-2 in the third, Ash serves for the match the first time, and she's up 15-love, and then she makes couple unforced errors, double faults for 15-40. She really didn't make Shelby earn that game. And then the next game was hard fought, and it was 30-all, and Shelby served. Okay, good hold from her. I give her that. I mean, it was terrific hold because she's not going to make her try and serve it out again. And then once more, Ash started missing a lot of forehands when she served for the match the second time, and that continued the rest of the way. And then once again, you thought, okay, you've had 2 chances to serve it up. When they get to 5-all in the tiebreak in the third set, who would you go with? And she loses the last 2 points. No, I think she let herself down, and Rogers gave Ash a chance to beat herself. Because as Rogers said, I much prefer hitting winners. She said after the match, I love hitting winners, but she knew she had to give her the moon balls. She gave her a lot of heavy top semi moon balls, breaking up the pad. I thought Ash was dealing with it okay for a while, and then she started to maybe she got a little frustrated with that. But I don't think that's what happened in the crucial games at 5-2 and 5-4 when Ash served for the match. That was more about Ash and Shelby not missing, but there were long stretches where the moon balls were definitely beneficial to Rogers.
And she plays Emma Raducanu today. That's winner. I mean, the winner of that match is in the quarterfinals of the U.S. Open. Emma's been playing really good. She almost blitzed Tormo 6-0, 6-0. She won 6-0, 6-1. But that's a match today. That's going to be interesting to see. I mean, the crowd again is going to be behind Shelby Rogers, but they've been cheering for Emma Raducanu as well. I mean, she had the great run at Wimbledon. She had to qualify for New York to get in. So she's played 7 matches already?
Just phenomenal. I would never have believed the scores. I thought the jury was still out after Wimbledon. I hadn't seen enough. Now I have. And now I'm much more convinced. I give her the slight edge over Shelby. I'm not selling Shelby short because she's a great competitor and a true professional. And I don't think she's going to have a terrible letdown and be complacent just because she's come off a big win over Ash Barty. She wants to win this and get to the quarters. I mean, it's going to be fascinating to see how she can regroup.
Yeah.
And then as far as Emma, can she sustain this incredibly high standard that she set the whole tournament? So I don't know. The crowd could pull Rogers through once more, but then there's also the potential that Emma wins the match 3 and 4 too. I don't know which way to lean.
Got it. One other American I want to talk about, and it's been nice to see the resurgence from him, was Jack Sock. He had a nice win over Alexander Bublik, 5 sets, really nice win in the second round. He then followed the Rogers-Barty match coming out lights out, absolutely lights out, wins the first set 6-2 over Sasha Zverev. I think he must have hit 30 winners in that set, and I don't feel like he missed. I think everyone thought he would eventually come back down to earth a little bit. Zverev may have raised his game, but unfortunately, Jack hurt that same injury where I saw him. I was in Cincy in his first round qualifying match. I think he played Alexei Poprin, and he pulled something in his leg early on in that match and had to withdraw from qualies and Cincy, and it looks like to be the same injury again. It's nice to see Jack playing well again, because boy, he drop, and I think he's on the up and up now.
No doubt about it. I mean, that was it. That was one of the more. It was a devastatingly potent display he put on in that first set. Sasha, and you're saying the winners, and of course those winners were all come almost entirely off his forehand side, which is one of the more dynamic shots in tennis. And Sasha said afterwards he could have lost. He was very modest about it. We'll never know, but it always helps to win the first set against a top player in a major, put him in that bind and make him have to come back and win 3 of the last 4. So it's a shame for Jack that he wasn't physically able to stand, and it looked like he might have to retire a lot sooner than he did, which was early in the 4th. That was a shame, but it was encouraging that if he's able to get physically healthy again, that we could see him back where he used to be, claiming a place in the top 10 in the world, or at least get somewhat close to that. It was an exhilarating set, and the crowd loved it, and Sasha was helpless. And it's very hard to put Sasha in that position. He's a big hitter himself. He also defends well. He just had nothing to say in that conversation for a set.
Yeah. A couple other things to note, just because I mean, again, we're not going to be able to hit on everything, but because, you and I are talking about this, I wanted to get your take on the first round match that when the draw came out, everyone was looking at, and that was Andy Murray versus Stefano Sitsypas. Sitsypas won in 5 sets. Again, the bathroom, changing breaks, all that stuff. There's always a question of Andy's health. How long can he play, right? Not so much in weeks, months, or years, but how long can he last in any one tennis match? I thought physically he held up unbelievably in that whole match.
He did. I mean, I think it's a pity for him that he didn't convert the 2. He had 2 set points for a 2-set-to-love lead, and in the second set tiebreak, and one of them he missed a very routine back. His backhand is so sound, and he just hit it cross court into the net. He never does that. Yeah, as a rally shot. You might miss a passing shot that way, but never during a rally, unless he's under great pressure, and he wasn't. So if he could have gone up 2-sets-to-love, but I thought he did a terrific job to come back after the disappointment of the second, win the third, and stay competitive in the 4th and 5th. But I do think, I don't know how you felt, David, some of the remarks that Andy made later were totally valid about Stefanos, and he has a right to say he doesn't respect him. I thought he carried it a bit too far with tweeting the next morning, because then it began to come off to me somewhat as sour grapes, which initially I don't think it was. Initially, I think he was staying within the reasonable lines in terms of, no, I'm making a principal point here, and this guy's a great player, but I don't like what he's doing. I wish Andy would have not personalized it quite as much and could have tried to make it more about, we need to change this rule. Too many players are abusing this rule, instead of singling out Stefanos, who is definitely not the only one. Brooksby has taken at least 1, maybe 2 long ones himself, but nobody talks about that. It's available, David, to the players the way it stands now. They need to get some kind of a time limit at every tournament. So, but still, get back to your original point. Very encouraging performance from Murray. We haven't seen him play that way in a long time. I want to see if over the course of the autumn, if he's able to put together some excellent best of 3 set matches against some leading players, and maybe bring himself back closer to the top of the game. It was a delight to watch him play that well.
Yeah, it really was. For you NFL fans, there's that NFL Red Zone network where they flip to each game when any team gets into a red zone, they switch to that game. It was about to score. And I don't remember what day it is. The days are all running together. Maybe it was Wednesday, but the 2 5th-set tiebreak matches back to back with Seppi over Fucsovics, followed by Maxime Cressy over Carreno Busta. I mean, that was 45 minutes of scintillating stuff back to back. I mean, that's what this week 1 has been. It's been unbelievable.
David, I'm really glad you brought those up, because think about that. Yes, it is exciting that Cressy is an American, and people, they know Busta and Carreno Busta now, and they saw what he did in the Olympics. And so that had some appeal for sure, but it's still not what you would call a marquee matchup. And then the other one with Fucsovics and Seppi. And again, who would really believe that you could have the fans so involved and so enthralled by a match between two foreign players in New York, neither of which is a household name. You're right. Those were just, I loved watching the ends of those matches. And I thought the recovery from Cressy against Karina Busta was astonishing. You know, he was down triple match point, and then he saved a fourth match point. And who would believe that he could climb out of that dark predicament? But he did. But yeah, those two matches were a joy to watch. They're proof that sometimes we don't need the most sparkling stars in the tennis universe to be out there competing. There are so many great players from the top to the bottom of a draw at every Grand Slam event. And we saw it in two cases back to back.
Steve, I want to hit on that point because, and I want to be careful how I say this, because no one wants Roger and Rafa to no longer be involved in the sport. Obviously, we want them. They are two of the greatest of all time. But that said, and I want to emphasize this, and it happens in any sport, and I can give you examples. When Magic and Larry Bird left, you had Michael come in. When Michael left, you had Kobe. Then Kobe left and LeBron. I think this week one was extremely important for the sport of tennis, that it's going to be just fine when Roger and Rafa are no longer playing. I think that's a really important point to make, because people were really worried about that. This week, hopefully put a little of that to rest. This sport is going to be just fine. It's going to move on. Again, I want them playing as long as they possibly can. Don't get me wrong. But for the sport as a whole, I think this week one really showed that the sport's going to be just fine.
No, I'm in accord, completely in accord. And I hope, my hope is, David, that there were a lot of sports fans. I think of myself watching the golf majors. I'm not really a golf. I don't follow it avidly at all. But when the majors are on, I tune in. And I'm watching a lot of different golfers, and I'm seeing how the greatness of so many of them in these majors. That's what we've seen this past week in New York. And I'm hoping that some of the general sports fans saw Fucsovic and Seppi, saw Cressy, saw some of these players that they'd never known before, and said, my God, these guys are, they are remarkable players. They are great players in their own right. How did they, why are they not ranked higher? And it was a great spectacle. And I hope there were a lot of people tuning in and watching that who because they were captured by the fact that the US Open is on, and realized, my God, we don't always have to have Novak Djokovic, Rafa Nadal, Roger Federer, and the top, the superstars to carry the sport every time out. We can enjoy great competitive matches like that and really be enticed by it. And that was clearly the case.
I echo your thoughts 100% on that. If you don't mind, I think we can we've touched a little bit about it, but week one is done. We're still digesting everything that's happened. Again, we're not going to hit on everything, but to look forward to week two, I guess we'll start with Novak. We mentioned he plays Jensen today. I think you and I both expect Novak will get by Jensen. He then possibly will play Berrettini, a rematch of the Wimbledon final, and then maybe Zverev in the semi, and Medvedev in the final. I mean, you go match by match, but I think Novak's doing what he needs to be doing right now. He's not overexpending any energy. There's a lot going on, a lot of pressure, extreme amount of pressure on him, and I think he maybe is trying to conserve a little of that. I think he will step it up a level this next week. He's going to have to. You think he's still by far your guy to win the title?
Well, I don't need to say by far. I don't know whether I necessarily put it in that context, but he still might pick, and I still like his chances. I mean, I would expect that Nishikori sharpened him up a bit. He didn't start that match well in the third round and lost the first set, but came back pretty strong. He was pushed hard in the last three, but not found wanting. And I think he lifted his game. And I expect that he'll hitting a lot of balls against Brooksby and dealing with that crowd is probably a good thing for him to deal with the tension. Then I would expect him to get through that at most four sets. I'm leaning toward three, but the worst scenario I think would be four. And then Berrettini, he not only beat him in the Wimbledon final, but he beat him in the French quarter. So now he's trying to complete kind of a three-surface sweep against the Italian. And I would think he would. Listen, he has great respect for Berrettini's serve and his forehand. Everybody does. But obviously nobody returns like Novak, and he found the way to break him a lot at Wimbledon, broke him in some crucial moments in Paris too. And I think that'll be the difference once more here would be the return of serve. And then, of course, Sasha. Now, let's talk a little bit about Sasha's section to get to Novak, though, David, because he has to first play Sinner. That's his round of 16. That's not easy. He lost him at the French 2020, and he split a couple of matches with him. And Sinner is, I don't think he serves quite well enough to beat Sasha, but I can see that match going 5. I can see it really being hard fought and close. Sasha probably, I still like his chances. Then he would play Harris or Opelka. And I think that is a total coin flip between Harris and Opelka. They've had a really close match over the summer. Harris just dissected Denis Shapovalov in straight sets.
Roy Harris has had an unbelievable summer.
Yeah.
Rafa.
I know. And think about it. Everybody thought, oh my God, at the time, it seemed like kind of a lot of people looked at it almost like a bad loss for Rafa at the time, but they didn't realize, a lot of them, just how much progress Harris has made this year and how self-assured he is and how solid he is.
Yeah.
So I don't think Sasha would have an easy time with him either, but I still believe we get the Djokovic-Zverev semi. And that will be fascinating to see what Djokovic can do after leading 6-1, 3-2, a set and a break at the Olympics, loses 8 games in a row from a set and a break, and then loses 6-1 in the third. That just never happens to him. So I think he hits some kind of an emotional, physical wall. I think it's only going to make him doubly determined this time, but I could still see them playing a blockbuster of a semifinal, David, with Djokovic winning in 4 or perhaps 5 sets. And then, as you say, it's likely to be Medvedev in the final. And I think it's what's interesting about Medvedev, and I see still your pick, by the way.
He is, and he's quiet, under the radar, just getting through, taking care of business. He still is my pick.
Okay, well, listen, he's a lot of people's pick. I think the draw opened up beautifully for him. It's hard to see him losing to anybody on his half. I know that if the kid gets through to the semis against him, if he's playing Alcaraz.
Well, that's why. Well, let's stop there for once. I want to ask your pick on that. Ajir Aliassime, the last 2 matches, I think he went 5 with Batista Agut, right, and 4 with Tiafoe.
Yes.
So
yes.
He's played 9 sets. Alcaraz has played 10 sets just in their past 2 matches. Are you going with? They're both extremely young, but Ajir Aliassime obviously more experienced. Are you going with Felix on that one?
I've given Felix slight edge, but I would not want to have my life savings depend on that by any means, because the kid just keeps surprising us. And the way he came back in the last round from 2 sets to 1 down to win the last 2 sets, 2 in love, when you thought he might be having the understandable letdown is proof of it. And yes, you're right. 10 sets, two rugged 5-setters in a row. Fortunately, the 4th and 5th didn't take too long. But
Felix played 9 sets too. He's played 9 tough sets too.
He has. Although at least this one with Francis was a reasonable 4 sets. I think I just give Felix a slight edge. He's so well-rounded. He serves so well. You know, I think he can stand up to Alcaraz's pace, David, a little better than Stefanos was able to do. You know, he's a bigger guy in his way, and he's got the 2-hander, while often Alcaraz was firing away at Stefanos's backhand, one-handed backhand, and able to puncture it a bit at times. Well, I think Felix, maybe he can deal with the pace a little better, and he also can take control himself at times and get in a lot. He knows how to attack, and he's got that great serve. I think he'll squeeze it out in 4 tight sets.
I'm with you. I'm picking Felix, and I cannot wait. I think that match is going to be fascinating to watch. I hope both of them play at near the top of their levels, because I think it's going to be unbelievable to watch. But I think Felix gets through in that match too. But again, it's going to be so great to watch.
David, at least, just a quick thing. At least I think once we get that match settled, and Medvedev, we got to figure he's winning his quarter for sure. Then at least it's a test in the semi. So far, I think he's known every time he's gone out on the court that barring something
crazy,
bizarre, and an injury or just some freakish performance from his opponent, that he feels he's going to win that match. And that included his last one with Dan Evans, which he set the tempo beautifully throughout and won it comfortably and straight. So, but that semi would at least be, if it's Alcaraz, he's dealing with the crowd with the crowd, although Medvedev is pretty good at that by now after what he went through 2 years ago at the Open. So I think he in some ways he'd look at it with sort of bemusement and deal with it accordingly. And then if it's Felix, if he has a very good serving day and he would have to come in a lot, I think, against Medvedev and exploit the fact that Daniel's so far behind the baseline returning. There's an outside shot, but I do expect to see. I do think either way that Medvedev makes the final, and we have a repeat of the Australian Open final. Djokovic versus Medvedev. And I think that would be a fitting way. We started the Grand Slam season that way. Now we'd be ending it with the same matchup. And the question
sounds
is,
good to me. I think the New York crowd would enjoy that as well. So,
David, the question would be, do we get the same outcome though? Because and you made your case for Medvedev, and I get it. And one of these days he is going to win a major, and maybe it's now. But in turn, Djokovic is driven by this historical quest. And he wants it so badly. And I also think Novak, obviously we know what a great big match player he is. And I also think a lot of people were doubting him against Daniel in Australia. And Daniel had looked very good coming into the finals. He'd beaten Sitsypas easily in the semis. And he was really rolling through that tournament for the most part.
I think if Djokovic makes the final, I think he wins. I think if Djokovic is going to lose, he's got to lose before the final. And Zverev, if he's healthy, runs through, maybe tips him in the semi. I don't know. But if Novak gets to the final,
I agree.
Novak wins it.
All right. So what you're saying is Medvedev wins the tournament as long as Djokovic doesn't make the final. But if Novak makes you're going with Novak.
I think Novak complete. If Novak gets to the final, he takes it.
I'm with you on that. I'm with you. I think it'd be closer than Australia. Probably tight 4 sets, maybe even 5. But he wins.
Yeah. On the women's matches, there were 2 today that I wanted to. We talked about Shelby and Raducanu, which I'm very excited to see. The other match today that's really interesting to me is Sakkari versus Andreescu. And Andreescu, I don't think has played. I mean, she's undefeated at the Open. She played it once, she won it, and she's now 3-0 this year. So she's 9-0 at the Open. In her second round match, she played Lauren Davis, and I'm a little biased just because Midwestern roots. Lauren is really small, but she has a huge heart how she plays. And if you look at the score, it was 6-4, 6-4. But if you watch that match, Lauren Davis was up a break 2 different times in the first set, and she was up a break in the second set and had other opportunities throughout that second set. Problem is she doesn't have weapons to really beat girls who are bigger and stronger than her. I say that because I don't think Bianca is playing at the level where we have all seen Bianca play at. And I'm interested in that match today against Sakkari. I think Sakkari could beat her tonight.
It's a strong case either way. I'm going to go with Bianca in 3 sets myself, but wouldn't be a bit surprised if Sakkari beat her. I do think she played better, David. I saw the Lauren Davis match too, and I hear you on that. There were chances, but I do believe the last round Bianca won 1 and 2.
Yeah,
and so I feel like she's actually improved with each round because let's face it, 7-5 in the third and the first round, she was pushed to the brink and she got sick during the match. Didn't get sick, but had to take pills for a stomach ailment. And so I think she's progressing nicely and starting to peak, but she'll need to against someone as good as Sakkari. I'm really looking forward to that match.
I am too. So let me ask you this. I mean, we were 0 for 3. Tracy Austin, Steve Flink, David Beilinson, 0 for 3 on our female pick. We all picked Ash Barty. Pick a winner. Pick a winner.
Oh, I'm gonna make the pick that many people are making right now, but I do it with great trepidation, you might say. Sabalenka, because the problem with Sabalenka is that she's always capable of beating herself. She's a big hitter and she's a very emotional player, and I'm not saying she's not a steely competitor in her own right, but there are days when she misfires. There are days when the self-destruction is there. So if I were sitting in her player box, I'd be nervous for all of these matches. But I do think there's a reason why she's seated second, and I think she has a real opportunity here to win this tournament. On the other hand, there's still 4 or 5 others that could do it.
I'll pick a wild card. I went with the favorite and I was wrong, so I'll pick a wild card. I'm going to go with Maria Sakkari. I like her game, and we'll see. She at the French Open, she had opportunities to win that semifinal match how many times. That was a fantastic match.
Oh, it was. Listen,
I'm going with her, but I will say this. I mean, I don't know how week 2 is going to top week 1 because week 1 was extraordinary. But you got Novak going for something that, what was it? Rod Laver, 1969. Was that the last year?
Right. That's right.
The pressure is going to keep building and building with Novak. You have some incredible matches today. I kept saying, I gave like little 1-minute snippets each morning of a recap of the previous day. And it sounded like a broken record because each morning I started with like, well, that was absolutely remarkable. I mean, each day topped to the previous day, and you thought that was impossible. So week 2, maybe even better. I'm not going to doubt myself. The past 6 days, what do we got? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. The past 7 days have been extraordinary. So who am I to say anything differently?
Quick final comment on Fernandez, David, before we leave the women. But I mean, I think she's going to beat Svitolina. I think Svitolina is a great match player and a wily veteran. But I think she's going to have real issues dealing with Fernandez's great serving, the wide slice, and trying to contain her off the forehand side. And I think it'll be tight, and probably 3, might well be 3 again, but I think Fernandez could win that. And I'd like to see that because I would love to see her. I'd love to see a Sabalenka Fernandez semifinal, and to know that, I mean, that would test the mettle of Sabalenka to try to deal with this kid. So I don't think that Fernandez's heroics are over yet.
Well, the next time we're going to record this, Steve, our question, everyone's question will be answered. Will we have someone who've joined the great Rod Laver, or will have someone stepped in his way and stopped, I guess, history in its tracks? The big three would, if that happens, the big three would still be tied 20, 20, and 20. All I say to tennis fans out there, this past week has been an absolute treat. I hope it continues through the rest of the tournament. It's been remarkable, and I can't wait to do this with you again after the final Sunday.
Looking forward to it, David. This was a very enjoyable discussion. We had an awful lot to chew on today.
Thanks so much, Steve. Can't wait to do it next week.